The Founding Fathers were not Christians. I put the link to this article in the description so you can check this out for yourself. I've also realised that I misspelled the word Christian, which is silly of me, and I will now correct it. Thank you for coming so quickly. I had a few more thoughts about this and that. And I processed enough of my thoughts for them to be fit to be expressed to you. But let's go back to the fact that the Founding Fathers were not Christians. This has been after a morning of explaining to a whole bunch of post-Christians. The thing is, these people are not even Christian. They find the whole idea absurd. And when you talk about whether their society needs a religion or not, they can't really go much further than to say that it must not be Islam, even though Christianity has failed, but maybe it hasn't, and it wasn't Christianity that failed, but people who failed it. But it's never them, you see. So they always say, oh, it's not Christianity that's failed, it's meaning the political establishment, the government, other people who are not Christians, but not them who are not themselves Christian either. So it's everybody else's fault but their own. And somehow everybody else has to do the job of being Christian, but the post-Christian Westerner, who doesn't care for that sort of thing. So I think Christianity must have failed if you're not even Christian. So I don't think you can have anything to say about Christianity. You can say as much as you like that Britain is a Christian nation, but if you're not yourself Christian, do you have the right to say it? And immediately people will say, well, what right have I to say anything about Christians? And I'm just making the point that what is supposed to be the moral system of the West is not actually the moral system of the West. Something else is. It's not Christianity. I'm saying it's liberalism, but liberalism is also kaput. So we have this twin idea of two sacred cows for Westerners, basically, and it's very confused in their minds because on the one hand it is sacred and on the other hand it isn't. And they can never make up their minds because when they get frightened, they will want to go back to the religion of their ancestors. But on the other hand, they've already mocked their own ancestors for being so foolish as to believe in such a silly thing. And then what will tend to happen is that they disengage. Well, the point is, you don't have to be Christian to recognize that the West is only nominally Christian. And I say nominally because it was Christian once upon a time, obviously. That's why you get all these, churches, cathedrals, and, Western people saying that this country is a Christian country. But it's not true, though. And it is very interesting about the Americans, because I've been saying that the American Revolution was a rejection of Christianity and a rejection of monarchy. And this is obviously not the version of history that most Westerners have received. Indeed, it wasn't my own. In fact, I never really learned about the American Revolution formally at school anyway, and most Britons don't learn it properly. As far as I know, they know some vague stuff about the Boston Tea Party, and that's it. They don't know the details. But strangely, a lot of Americans don't know much about their own history either. And so it's very hard to talk about to these people about their history. You know, it is really like talking to somebody half mad. I mean, imagine if you had somebody that you wanted to say something to, like, when we met for lunch the other day and you said this and we met whoever, and this person just has no memory of it, no memory of the fact that you met for lunch or what they ate for lunch and what was spoken about and who joined us for lunch. No memory at all. So you can't even begin to talk to them. And this is basically what I'm facing, dealing with these people who have no memory of their own history, and they won't look it up. They won't look it up either. I mean, the number of Americans that I met who obviously haven't read the farewell speech of George Washington, even though they might have possibly heard of George Washington, these Americans, I guess they don't like reading, or they have the attention span of a goldfish. They prefer to read the notifications on their cell phone, as they call it there. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about is the Founding Fathers were not Christians. And really, I haven't actually read this article, but I'm going to read it. It's not very long. And while I read it, I can understand it and explain it to myself and perhaps to you. Of course, cockfights. Well, I don't know what it is you want from me. If you want lots of blood sports, you need really to talk to somebody else, because I really want debates that get somewhere. And, okay, I have a problem in that I can't find anybody to have honest, rational discussions about anything with. So, this is basically the scale of the work I have to do. So not only are people just not wanting to do what I want them to do, and this includes rabbis, I'm afraid, they are going slowly mad, and I can't reach them anymore. It's my analogy about, meeting somebody for lunch. Maybe just yesterday. Well, they can't remember that they met me for lunch yesterday, or what they had for dinner, or what we discussed, or, so there's no point talking to them really. But back to the Founding Fathers not being Christians. The article begins, the Christian right is trying to rewrite the history of the United States as part of its campaign to force its religion on others. According to this Orwellian revision, the Founding Fathers of this country were pious Christians who wanted the United States to be a Christian nation with laws that favored Christians and Christianity. Not true. The early presidents and patriots were generally deists or Unitarians, believing in some form of impersonal providence, but rejecting the divinity of Jesus and the absurdities of the Old and New Testaments. Thomas Paine was a pamphleteer whose manifestos encouraged the faltering spirits of the country and aided materially in winning the War of Independence. This is by Stephen Morris, Professor of Physics at Los Angeles Harbor College in Wilmington, California. I don't know when this was written, but to carry on. So Professor Stephen Morris continues, I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish Church, by the Roman Church, by the Greek Church, by the Turkish Church, by the Protestant Church, nor by any church that I know of. Each of those churches accuse the other of unbelief, and for my own part, I disbelieve them all. Okay, so this is a quote from Thomas Paine, not from Professor of Physics Stephen Morris. George Washington, the first president of the United States, seems to have had the characteristic unconcern of the 18th century deist for the forms and creeds of institutional religion. Although he often referred to Providence as an impersonal force, remote and abstract, he never declared himself to be a Christian, according to contemporary reports, or in any of his voluminous correspondence. Washington championed the cause of freedom from religious intolerance and compulsion. When John Murray, a Universalist who denied the existence of hell, was invited to become an army chaplain, the other chaplains petitioned Washington for his dismissal. Instead, Washington gave him an appointment. On his deathbed, Washington uttered no words of a religious nature and did not call for a clergyman to be in attendance. John Adams, the country's second president, was drawn to the study of law, but faced pressure from his father to become a clergyman. He wrote that he found among the lawyers a noble air and gallant achievements, but among the clergy the pretended sanctity of some absolute dunces. Late in life, he wrote, 20 times in the course of my late reading have I been upon the point of breaking out. This would be the best of all possible worlds if there were no religion. It was during Adams' administration that the Senate ratified the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which says in Article 11 that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. This treaty with Tripoli was written and concluded by Joe Barlow during Washington's administration. Thomas Jefferson, third president and author of the Declaration of Independence, said, I trust there is not a young man now living in the United States who will not die a Unitarian. He referred to the revelation of St. John as the ravings of a maniac and wrote, the Christian priesthood, finding the doctrines of Christ leveled to every understanding and too plain to need explanation, saw in the mysticisms of Plato materials with which they might build up an artificial system which might, from its indistinctness, admit everlasting controversy, give employment for their order and introduce it to profit, power, and preeminence. The doctrines which flow from the lips of Jesus himself are within the comprehension of a child, but thousands of volumes have not yet explained the Platonisms engrafted on them, and for this obvious reason, that nonsense can never be explained. James Madison, fourth president and father of the Constitution, was not religious in any conventional sense. Religious bondage shackles and debilitates the mind and unfits it for every noble enterprise. During almost 15 centuries has the legal establishment of Christianity been on trial? What have been its fruits? More or less in all places, pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in the laity, in both superstition, bigotry, and persecution. Ethan Allen, whose capture of Fort Ticonderoga while commanding the Green Mountain Boys, helped inspire Congress and the country to pursue the War of Independence, said that Jesus Christ was not God is evidence from his own words. In the same book, Allen noted that he was generally denominated a deist, the reality of which I never disputed, being conscious I am no Christian. When Allen married Fanny Buchanan, he stopped his own wedding ceremony when the judge asked him if he promised to live with Fanny Buchanan agreeable to the laws of God. Allen refused to answer until the judge agreed that the God referred to was a God of nature and the laws he was written in the great book of nature. What does that mean? What book of nature? Benjamin Franklin, delegate to the Continental Congress and the Constitutional Convention, said, "As to Jesus of Nazareth, my opinion of whom you particularly desire, I think the system of morals and his religion has received various corrupting changes, and I have, with most of the present dissenters in England, some doubts as to his divinity, though it is a question I do not recognize upon, having never studied it, and think it needless to busy myself with it now, when I expect soon an opportunity of knowing the truth with less trouble." He died a month later, and historians consider him, like so many great Americans of his time, to be a deist, not a Christian. So there you go. The founding fathers were not Christian. So what were they? If you're going to pigeonhole the founding fathers, you're going to pigeonhole them into being Jewish or Hindu or being Buddhist, or you're going to pigeonhole them Muslim or proto-Muslim. So there you go. The founding of the American Republic was Islamic. Of course it is. The First Amendment was based on chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran. There is a White House Quran, and it belonged to Thomas Jefferson, who drafted the Virginia Statute on Religious Freedom, which subsequently became the First Amendment. The White House Quran belonged to him, so we may presume that he has read it. Also, there was a fire in his library, and he bought himself another copy of the Quran. So it wasn't like, oh, well, it's gone, I'm never going to read it again, I don't care about it. So he did care about it, and he must have read it. And I guess while I'm here, I can read to you what was said about the Quran. So, I think I've done this one before, but I should go over it again because I don't think you are quite familiar with these ideas. Ralph is challenging me for leadership of the bounty right. You know, I don't even want this theatre because, look, I've been on Discord, I've been on all these places, and I already know that a lot of people can just sit there and talk for hours and hours and hours. I know I can, and sometimes I listen to my old streams and I think that's terrible. I really was faffing around, and I was okay. So I kind of congratulated myself that I bothered to, timestamp or at least post links in the description that give you a clue as to what I was talking about. And I thought, quite a few of them, you just read the links that I gave you, and you would be better informed than if you listened to the whole of the stream, which was basically faffing around. The abysmal numbers. Well, you're here, Stephen James, and maybe you're really the most important person in my life at the moment. Being, I think, somebody who understands what I'm trying to say. So, maybe I'd have, maybe it's enough just to have one of you than, 1,000 uncomprehending, open-mouthed, close-eyed, close-eared, cloth-eared clods. But let me talk about the Jefferson Koran. It's not long. On December 9th, 1805, Thomas Jefferson hosted the United States' first iftar at the White House. Now, I have to look that up because I'm not really such an expert that I know all about these things. Okay, so it's just going on about the Barbary War, and, well, Britain has been called a nation of pirates by the Spaniards. So I guess we all get called names from time to time. So iftar, this is the breaking of the fast every evening after sunset during Ramadan. Also, the breaking of the fast of Ramadan and the first sighting of the new moon on the evening of Eid al-Fitr. According to the example of the Prophet Muhammad, the fast should be broken by eating dates or salt. Okay, so he broke a fast? What does it mean by... Okay, it was an unintentional event, one that occurred as a result of Jefferson's scheduled meeting with an invited envoy from the Tunisian government. It was the end of the First Barbary War, and Jefferson was anxious to establish better diplomatic relations with the North African states while ensuring the security of American interests in the Mediterranean. Upon being informed of the envoy's fasting to observe the Islamic month of Ramadan, Jefferson had the mealtime at the White House changed from 3:30 in the afternoon to precisely at sunset in an effort to accommodate his guest. This gesture on behalf of the president was not simply a diplomatic one, but one that demonstrated Jefferson's familiarity with and comfort with Islam, a faith that interested him since his time as a student at the College of William and Mary. Indeed, Jefferson's interest in the Quran and his own study of Arabic led to his active promotion and eventual creation of an Oriental languages department at his alma mater. As a scholar and a diplomat, Jefferson was keenly aware and interested in the world outside of America and the importance of cultural and intellectual capital to the success of the United States. In studying his Quran and the documents that he produced as a part of his nation-building efforts, we see just how Jefferson displayed his knowledge and perhaps how influential Islam was to one of the nation's founding fathers. Early American interest in Islam. Just remember to put the link in the description again. Let's see what you said in the chat. Nothing much. Early interest in Islam. American interest in Islam and the Quran did not begin with Thomas Jefferson's serendipitous purchase of a Quran while a student, but dates as far back as the nation's Puritan forefathers. The firebrand Peter Cotton Mather is said to have devoured books written about the Ottoman Empire and referenced the Quran on numerous occasions. Benjamin Franklin, parodying of North African pirate addressing a colonial audience in the 17th century, asked his audience, Is it worse to follow Muhammad than the devil? A question it seems he did not receive an answer to from amongst his many readers. Even John Adams knew enough of Islam to discuss it. In fact, Adam, like many early Americans from German immigrants to Pennsylvania to our founding fathers, owned copies of the Quran. Although it may surprise many contemporary Americans that the Puritans read outside the gospel and Franklin and Adams were well versed in the diversity of the world's faith, these were men who had a profound and insatiable intellectual curiosity and political genius, in that they understood collectively that this knowledge was essential to the success of the early colonies as well as to the establishment of a sovereign and sustainable nation state. Unsurprisingly, given his reputation as a voracious reader and humanist, Jefferson was perhaps the most attuned to this necessity of learning about world religions and the social systems and governments that they created. Indeed, it is really through Jefferson more than any other early American statesman that we understand the early importance and impact of Islam upon the new republic. Jefferson purchased his copy of George Sale's translation of the Quran at a bookseller on Duke of Gloucester Street while completing his legal studies at the College of William and Mary. This translation of the Quran, the best described into English up to that moment, was prefaced by Sale's own introduction. If the religion and civil institutions of foreign nations are worth our knowledge, those of Muhammad, the lawgiver of the Arabians, founder of an empire which in less than a century spread itself over a greater part of the world than the Romans were ever masters of, must needs be so. Sale was also a lawyer, and his introduction to the Quran as a law book is important for understanding how Jefferson read and related to the Quran. Sale placed a heavy emphasis on the notion of Quranic exegesis, treating the Quran as it was, a sourcebook for Islamic law. A further influence on Jefferson's treatment of the Quran during his legal studies came from the work of Samuel von Pufendorf, a 17th century legal scholar whose Of the Law of Nature and Nations was the preeminent work on comparative law during the period that Jefferson was studying law. In his work, von Pufendorf cites Islam, usually disapprovingly, but also with a characteristically rigid, moralistic Protestant worldview, which sometimes unexpectedly lent itself to praise of the Quran. He praised Islam vis-à-vis the Quran for its laws against games of chance, its emphasis on moral behavior and dress, and the encouragement to establish peace amongst nations. European legal scholars, as well as Jefferson, found it difficult to completely discount the contents of the Quran. Continuously mining for reasons to critique and discredit Islam, there were occasions where scholars praised Islam, particularly in its stringent prescriptions for morality and justice. There's little doubt that Jefferson was influenced by not only von Pufendorf's writing and his legal study, but also the context of deism and the American Revolution. The law, deism, and the Quran. Check the chat. Nothing intelligent so far. The law, deism, and the Quran. There are two ways in which Jefferson understood the Quran. The first is as a law book, as a legal document. The Quran, together with the Hadith and Sunnah, are the scaffolding upon which the Sharia or Islamic law is erected. So the hyperlinks for Hadith and Sunnah, and I'm going to read it to you. So let's go to the hyperlink for Hadith. Okay, it says I can't access it without subscribing. So I basically use it interchangeably, but from what I think the Sunnah is basically what stories about the companions, about the Prophet, and Hadith is legal rulings based on that. I think I can look it up for you from a non-Oxford source, I suppose. Sunnah, Hadith and the Sunnah difference. It's going to be complicated. I'll try to read it to you anyway. Sunnah means path. It's a bit complicated. Sunnah is always authentic, while Hadith can be authentic as well as spurious. Hadith have been written and interpreted by scholars of Islam. It's all rubbish. Okay, I'm not going to bother explaining it because the explanations are obviously not clear. But I'll put the link in the description. So to carry on, so basically it's about the Quran being a source of law, which Jefferson understood. Jefferson understood this implicitly about the Quran, probably as a result of his own legal training. In his legalistic understanding of the Quran, he was able to probe the text for information for his diplomatic endeavors, particularly those involving the Barbary states. However, there was a second means by which Jefferson understood the Quran, and that is through his adherence to deism. A slightly heretical view to possess in Christendom, deism espoused the idea that there's a single all-powerful creator, God, Allah, etc., but that this creator does not intervene in or manipulate human affairs. The deistic view of religion is firmly rooted in natural rather than supernatural law. Jefferson, educated amongst the intellectual elite of the Enlightenment, was very much taken with deism's idea and became one of its many 18th century followers. Of the many tenets of deism, the one that is most consistent with Islamic belief is the rejection of the Trinity. As the Quran emphatically states, those people who say that God is the third of three are defying the truth. There's only one God. For Jefferson and other deists, this core aspect of Islamic belief made Islam marginally more relatable than Christianity. There you go. In his analysis of the Quran, Jefferson did not follow the precedent set by the so-called Jefferson Bible, in which Jefferson chose a copy of the Bible from his library and enacted a deist approach to the text by literally removing every supernatural or otherwise scientifically unsound event with a razor blade. Happily, he left his copy of the Quran completely intact. If we examine how Jefferson read the Quran, we can see where, in contrast to the literal removal of everything that was antithetical to deism, as in the Jefferson Bible, Jefferson did feel the need to perform an intellectual autopsy on the Quran. Perhaps because the Quran is relatively light on miracles compared to the Bible. For whatever reason, Jefferson refrained from disemboweling his Quran and instead put it to good use in both state building and the fledgling America's relationship with the Middle East. During the periods when Jefferson was not using his copy of the Quran to study for legal or political purposes, the text was housed in his library at Monticello. Jefferson's methodology for organizing his his books was one of his own rendering, essentially storing the titles on shelves according to their topics, and in case of religion, where he felt that the faith they represented figured into the grand scheme of the universe. At first glance, it appears that Jefferson ordered his books chronologically from pagan Greek mythology to Christian. However, Jefferson placed the Quran immediately following texts on the Greek mythology, but before copies of the Bible and copies of the Old and New Testament. Some scholars argue that Jefferson's placement of the Quran indicates that he considered Islam to be an improvement over paganism, but still ranked below Judaism and Christianity. Does this provide any insight into what Jefferson really thought about Islam? That despite his pluralistic worldview, Jefferson's sympathy truly lay with Christianity? This may be partially the truth, but there's more to Jefferson's logic. Early copies of the Quran, such as those acquired by Adams, Jefferson, and others, often included brief histories or introductions to the text as a means of giving early Orientalists and curious readers some context. If we think about Jefferson's interest in historical precedent and culture in relation to religious belief and practice, his placement of the Quran ahead of the Judeo-Christian scriptures seems logical. One way that Jefferson may have approached his ranking of texts involves comparing pre-Islamic practices with those of Islam. In his study, Jefferson may have examined how much was appropriated from pre-monotheistic traditions into each of the three Abrahamic faiths, thereby establishing degrees of removal from what he considered to be paganism. Islam, indeed, incorporated some aspects of pre-Islamic practice and converted them into Islamic ones, or in Islamic understanding, rededicated them to monotheism. For example, pilgrimage to the Kaaba in Mecca pre-existed Muhammad. Muslims believe that the sanctuary had originally been built by Abraham and dedicated to what was believed to be the only God, but that gradually people had developed beliefs in other gods and placed their icons in the Kaaba. Muslims believe that Muhammad cleared these idols from the Kaaba and rededicated it to God. By contrast, Christianity may have appeared to Jefferson to have fewer pre-monotheistic elements. For that reason, Jefferson may have considered Christianity to be superior to Islam. Rubbish! The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Quran. Whether or not Jefferson was also familiar with the Constitution of Medina, the document dictated by Muhammad to govern relations among the diverse Muslim and Jewish tribes in Medina, is unknown. As legislative documents, there are similarities between the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the Quran. Some of the contents of the Constitution of Medina, particularly in the inclusion of the unification and protection of people regardless of creed under the government, equal rights and protection of religious groups, are articulated in both the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution. Did the contents of the Quran and perhaps even the Constitution of Medina influence Jefferson when he authored the two most important documents in American history? The Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution contain similar clauses on some topics. The Constitution of Medina states, "The Jews shall maintain their own religion and the Muslims theirs. The close friends of Jews are as themselves, and those who followed them and joined them and struggle with them, they form one and the same community in solidarity against their enemies." Finally, the conclusion of the Constitution states, "Strangers under protection shall be treated on the same ground as their protectors, but no stranger shall be taken under protection except with consent of his tribe. No woman shall be taken under protection without the consent of her family." If Jefferson was familiar with the Constitution of Medina, the document may have influenced his inclusion in the Declaration of Independence of the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, an almost dogmatic belief in American culture. Reflections of the Constitution of Medina and the Quran also can be discerned from the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment of the Constitution, guaranteeing freedom of religion, was originally called the Bill for Establishing Religious Freedom. In his autobiography, Jefferson recounted that the contents of the bill that he was emphatic that the language of the bill should name precisely the groups protected, writing that the Jew, the Gentile, the Christian, and the Mohammedan, the Hindu, and infidel of every emphasis mine denomination should be protected under the law. Despite not knowing what Jefferson's familiarity may have been with the Constitution of Medina, we can still see the influence of certain elements of its teachings within the Quran, in particular Surah 262. Verily, those who believe and those who are Jews and Christians and Sabians, whoever believes in God and the last day and do righteous good deeds and shall have their reward with their Lord, on them shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. The interpretation of this verse is traditionally that those who are members of the Abrahamic family of faith are protected from both spiritual and social persecution. Did Jefferson find inspiration in this surah? Perhaps. In 1788, when the states voted to ratify the Constitution, the issue of non-Christian identification was part of the debate. In particular, a lively debate was conducted over Article 6, Section 3, which states that no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. A similar clause appears in the Constitution of Medina, where loyalty to the state is not tested by religious affiliation, but by demonstrated loyalty, and that demonstration guarantees the protection of the tribe or state. In North Carolina, delegates debated the amendment deploying the hypothetical situation of a Muslim president. Whether or not Jefferson was influenced by the Constitution of Medina or his study of the Quran in authoring either the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, we may never know, but we can conjecture that his understanding of Islam and other world religions, compounded with his remarkable education at the College of William and Mary, which was informed intellectually by the Enlightenment, shaped his crafting of American national pride. So there is incorporated in the last few paragraphs the idea of secularism, and that loyalty can only be assumed. Not assumed, because that's the whole idea of not assuming it. It has to be demonstrated. So a citizen, whatever his or her religion, has to demonstrate loyalty before, rather than being the right religion. Do I want to read the stuff about the Barbary Wars? Okay, I'll do it. For the sake of completeness, I will do it. Why does it matter if Jefferson's a Mason? I mean, why? Well, why should it matter? Because obviously the Masons were meant to be a brotherhood of those of the Abrahamic faiths, right? That's what it's for. Previously, I said that probably the whole purpose of Masonry is really to get the Christians outnumbered, because the idea is that you can join Masonry only if you're an adherent of the Abrahamic faith, i.e. only if you're Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. And really, the Eastern religions are not included. I know that they kind of try to muddy the waters and stuff, but and we also know the attitude of the the Catholic Church. It's basically saying, don't you even think of joining the Masons, or you'll be excommunicated. So the whole idea of Catholicism is they're trying to head these Jews and Muslims off at the pass, because at the time, of course, Catholicism, the Catholic Church was the most powerful church. I'll read that bit on the. I'll look up what the Catholic Church says about Masonry. I know from Michael Boris that it's forbidden. Papal ban of Freemasonry. There's actually a Wikipedia entry on the subject. The Catholic Church first prohibited Catholics from membership in Masonic organizations and other secret societies in 1738. Since then, at least 11 popes have made pronouncements about the incompatibility of Catholic doctrines and Freemasonry. From 1738 until 1983, Catholics who publicly associated with or publicly supported Masonic organizations were censured with automatic excommunication. Since 1983, the prohibition on membership exists in a different form, although there was some confusion about membership following the 1962-1965 Second Vatican Council. The Church continues to prohibit membership in Freemasonry because it believes that Masonic principles and rituals are irreconcilable with Catholic doctrines. The current norm, the 1983 Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith's Declaration of Masonic Associations, states that faithful who enroll in Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion, and membership in Masonic associations is prohibited. The most recent CDF document about the incompatibility of Freemasonry with Catholic faith was issued in 1985. So we know that the Catholics are still triggered by Masonry, and this is my theory, that Catholics just don't want Jews and Muslims in their lodge to say, look Christian, your Trinity is nonsense, and you had better give it up. So I think that's the whole purpose of Masonry. Aren't I clever to have worked it all out? And come on, Masons, do your work. Do what you would do what you do what you were founded to do. This morning I was basically telling the rabbis that it's time they did what they're going to, what they were chosen by God to do, and if they didn't, they should just hand in their notice. They should resign. They should poop or get off the pot. Because they're just not. I mean, you really have to give them their marching orders, really. It's like, either you do what you're supposed to do, or you resign and make way for people who are able to do your work. And obviously Jews are not up to the job of teaching Gentiles properly the Noahide laws, because they're all scared. I mean, I've been asking them to do it for years, and they refuse because they're scared. And the rising anti-Semitism, and it's like, okay, you're too scared, but you still have to. You can't just sort of stay quiet and not do anything and hope the whole thing will go away, because actually it's not going to go away. Things are going to get worse, and anti-Semitism will increase because governments will be performing even more badly than before. And of course, it is a law of human nature that may be something to do with how God created humanity, that Jews will always get the blame when Gentiles suffer from their bad government. So, I've done the best I could to protect Jews and say, look, Jews are just people like other Gentiles using the rules to suit them, to get things done, to punish their enemies. And if your rules allow Jews to do what they have been doing, then of course they're going to do it. They're going to, destroy the enemies using liberal laws. Why wouldn't they? And lots of Gentiles do the same thing too. So if the problem is with your laws, and you're just complaining that Jews are better at exploiting loopholes or using the law to their advantage than you are, then it's not because they're actually wanting to destroy your civilization. What they're doing is using the rules to advantage themselves. And if you're too stupid to do it, then that's your own lookout. And and if your government doesn't care about you, why do you expect Jews and Muslims to care about you? I mean, I guess they assume that if you're so great, then you have your own ways of protecting yourself. Little realizing that you have no way of protecting yourself because basically your government doesn't care about you, because you don't work. All you do is whinge about immigrants, and the immigrants are the better, cheaper labor, and these immigrants at least can be frightened into voting Labour, right, or Democrat. Well, the white locals are just not going to do anything. They're not going to be voting for anyone. So, politically you're useless. In terms of utility to other white people, if you don't work, if you're just one of the welfare class, and why would anybody care about you? And if you don't work, then nobody's going to marry you, and your women don't find you useful. So yeah, I guess you're fucked. And nobody other than me actually bothers to tell you why it's all happening. Because nobody cares about you. They don't want. They're not even going to tell you to. Well, you've got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You got to, do things to stop being so weak and pathetic and being so stupid and degenerate. Nobody tells you that. All the people who presume to lead you, the BNP, the UKIP, all these people, they just say, no, they just blame the Jews. They did it to you. Blame the Muslims, whom you find so annoying and numerous. Just you did nothing wrong. You're so wonderful. Why would anybody hate you? Obviously you're so marriageable. That's why your women love you, which is why you're incels. And yeah, I mean, really, if anyone cared about you, they might have explained it to you. Maybe you might have parents or grandparents who say, look, you can't be claiming welfare for the rest of your life. But then you think, well, what can I do? I went to a shit school. I can't read. I can't write. I don't know how to take drugs and wank to porn and play video games, and I don't want to do anything else. So, the welfare state, that's going to be the death of you. And that's why I think slavery is actually useful in getting people back to work again, because things are going to get expensive, right? And the only way to, stop this nonsense of inflation is to basically say, look, there are people in the country who are in theory capable of work, and you're just paying them to do nothing and sit at home and whack to porn. So really you need to get them working and get them, in a mindset prepared to work, and maybe homelessness will make them want to work, right? The prospect of homelessness, This is how modern slaves are recruited. These modern slavers just go up to men sleeping rough and say, would you like to be housed and fed? If so, come with us and do a bit of work for us, and we'll see to it that you get a roof over your head and food in your belly. How about that, mate? How about that? And these homeless men say, yeah, sure. Anything's got to be better than being homeless. So this is what slavery would be useful for, this practice. So recently I've been talking about how to administer slavery under these conditions, because increasingly, as people get more interested in Islam, they'll be thinking, oh, what about these slave girls, eh? Slave girls. We like the idea of slave girls. So what I suggest is this. There's a rule in the Quran that says you can't. Let me start again. I'm going to interpret the Quran as tolerating prostitution, because there is a verse that says, don't force your slave girls into prostitution if they wish to remain chaste. So it means that it's okay if you don't force them, and if they say they're going to do it, they're prepared to do it, then it's okay. And then then you think about women who are not slaves. So if women who are not slaves, okay, if slave girls are allowed to be prostitutes, then all the more would free women be allowed to become prostitutes if that's what they wish to do. So prostitution would be legal under secular Koranism in licensed brothels. And so how would it work for slave girls? Because we know people think, I'll just buy myself a few slave girls. And I thought, well, no, actually, it'd be quite expensive. I mean, if you want to have sex with them, you go to the brothel and you have sex with them there and pay them for whatever services you wish to pay them for. And then, but it's possible that, some men might think, well, I might want myself a wife. So I need to check them out. And maybe, maybe I don't just want to have sex with them. I kind of want to talk to them, maybe take them out to dinner or have them to stay for a day or a week, to see if they're okay. And so they might want to do that. Because, basically, if you have a woman in your home and you think, oh, I got a slave girl, I think in the end you find yourself marrying her, because you can't be having sex with her the whole time, and eventually you'll think, well, why don't you do a bit of cleaning, eh? And then she will, then she'll do a bit of cooking, and then you'll want her to take her out somewhere, because it's more fun to take some bird out than go out alone, and then you might get her pregnant, and one thing after another, and you'll find yourself with a wife. So that's basically how it works. And I guess these days of cheap sex, you could kind of hire a prostitute with a view to marrying her, couldn't you? So you can book her for, instead of a sex session, you'd have to book her for maybe lunch, maybe dinner, maybe a weekend, maybe, to have the girlfriend experience it, and so on, until you think, I like her. I like her. I think she'll do. I'd like her to be my wife, for example. So this would be how it would work. And as for the conditions of slavery under secular Koranism, I think what would have to happen is that the ownership of the slave would reside in the state, and the state hires out the slave to hirers of slaves. And every slave would have the prospect of manumission, would have the right to manumission. So, you end up being a slave, there will be value to your labor, and it goes towards your account, at the Department of Work, Pensions and Manumissions, and whatever is a sum that is required to manumit you. Your wages, your earnings will go towards that account until finally you pay it off, and then you maybe you want savings to start up a business, or I don't know, put down a deposit for a mortgage or something, whatever. So obviously, there's no point, leaving immediately. You pay, you paid off your manumission. You kind of need to save up, so you have, you can pay your living expenses, because obviously you will have plans for the future to start a business, or your life as a free man or free woman. So I think that could work quite nicely. Then people would. So instead of paying people to stay at home and wank to porn and watch daytime TV and eat themselves obese, you'll be getting some value out of these people, and they would be doing something useful. You're gardening, you're babysitting, you're typing, you're whatever. And I'm not saying that it's only going to be, cotton pickers or anything like that, because, a lot of professional people have, ended up, getting into terrible debt. I mean, you can imagine, maybe even bankers might be, slaves in the end. And obviously they would, the value of their skills would be greater than that of, cotton pickers or whatever. So I think in this way, the economy would be revived, and people just learn their lesson about choosing carefully who's going to be their wife, and maybe it's okay. There's a story in the Old Testament, because I'm sure a lot of you have been saying, oh gosh, marry a prostitute, isn't that terrible? But when you think of how promiscuous most Western women are anyway, they might as well be prostitutes, right? When you think of how many men they might already have had sex with for free, maybe, shopping around for a wife in brothels is not such a crazy idea as you might think it is now. And obviously, yes, the story of Rahab. Anyway, you've heard of the city of Jericho that the Jews besieged. Well, they didn't even besiege it. They basically, I think they blew their horn, and the walls of Jericho came tumbling down. But in Jericho was this woman called Rahab, who's believed to be a prostitute, and she was the one who harbored these scouts from Moses. Anyway, she hid them under some straw or something, and she did them a favor, and then she said, when you finally attack the city, can you leave me and my possessions and my loved ones alone? And they were true to their word, and so she wasn't killed or attacked or looted, and guess what? Joshua married her. Joshua, a prophet of God, married a prostitute. That's what happened. So, it's not the end of the world if you're a prostitute. That's kind of what that's the point I wanted to emphasize. Now, the Barbary Wars. Do you want me to talk about the Barbary Wars? Yeah, that's what I knew you'd like the story about the slave girls. Gilbert, I don't know why you're insisting on secular Koranism and secular Talmudism. What about the Talmud do you need to be incorporated into your society?
I don't know what you mean, Effluent. I can be approaching God as Allah. I don't know what you mean. No, Domingo, I knew that they were. I knew for years that they were frightened. I mean, you can laugh at these rabbis for being afraid to tell Christians that their religion is idolatry and blasphemy, but those Muslims are not any better. Are they any better? Um, I, I think. Oh, okay. But the one about Christopher Hitchens. I think it was the one about him saying that then he killed them and he wiped them out in the Barbary Wars, right? I remember um, Condop saying something like that. Okay, let me read to you the Barbary Wars, the heading on the Barbary Wars. In 1786, where Jefferson was serving as the United States ambassador to France, the issue of piracy in the Mediterranean became the most serious economic threat to the newly established United States. Independence from Great Britain had had economic consequences abroad. This was before international law had established protections for territorial waters. So if a ship sailed into range from a country with which local government had no treaty, it was generally assumed to be hostile and therefore subject to attack. While America was still a group of colonies of the British Crown, its ships were protected because the Crown had such a treaty and paid an annual tribute to the government in Tripoli to protect its interests. But with the Declaration of Independence, the US lost the protection of both the royal coffers and the Royal Navy, making travel and trade a precarious endeavor around the coast of the Maghreb. Pirates from the modern day states of Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia attacked American merchant ships trading in the region with abandon. Jefferson, together with his contemporary John Adams, who was then serving as the ambassador to England, met with the ambassador from Tripoli, Sidi Haji Abdul Rahman Adja, in an attempt to understand why American ships were being attacked and Americans being taken hostage. In a report to the then Secretary of State John Jay, Jefferson cites the ambassador as saying, "It was written in their Koran that all nations which had not acknowledged the Prophet were sinners, whom it was the right and duty of the faithful to plunder and enslave, and that every Mussulman who was slain in this warfare was sure to go to paradise. He said also that the man who was the first to board a vessel had one slave over and above his share, and that when they sprang to the deck of an enemy's ship, every sailor held a dagger in each hand and a third in his mouth, which usually struck such terror into the foe that they cried out for quarter at once." A dagger in each hand and a third in the mouth. Ha ha. Scholars recognize the ambassador's paraphrasing of the sword verse Surah 9:5 as a Quranic passage sometimes used to justify jihad is popular is popularly known. The document is an excellent summation of the pirates' motivations. It may also be read as an eerie foreshadowing of the rationale claimed by some terrorists today. But Jefferson's understanding of the Quran resulted in a very different outcome from today's global war and terror. The 1796 Treaty of Tripoli was Congress's response to the pirating of American ships in the Mediterranean. Drafted by Jefferson's friend and colleague Joel Barlow, the treaty stated emphatically that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Mussulmen. Nearly 200 years before the State Department found it necessary to delve into the Quran, Jefferson had already done so to great effect. Jefferson again engaged with the Barbary pirates as president between 1801 and 1805 during the first of what would become known as the Barbary Wars. Politically, this would be one of his last diplomatic engagements with Islam, where he utilized his knowledge of the Quran for the benefit of the United States. At the conclusion of the First Barbary War, with the United States procuring its first victory on foreign shores, a temporary peace was reached, and Jefferson extended an invitation to the Tunisian ambassador in Washington to attend dinner at the White House. The invitation happened to fall in the month of Ramadan, and so dinner was rescheduled and became the White House's first iftar. This iftar that marked the conclusion of 1805 and the treaty with at least one of the Barbary states was a symbolic conclusion to Jefferson's documented and known use of the Quran and his knowledge of Islam. Surely both Jefferson and his guests could appreciate the breaking of the Ramadan fast, a reward of nourishment after a day of reflection and struggle for personal betterment. So that was quite a good story. And I have one more heading to read to you. Okay, I get the feeling that you want me to read the Hitchens one. Okay, I'm going to read the final paragraph. The legacy of Jefferson's Quran. Thomas Jefferson rarely spoke on the topic of religion and did not leave us any written record of his opinion of Islam. But based on how he used the Quran politically, we can conjecture about his attitudes toward what his colleague George Washington called the children of the stock of Abraham. He was certainly sympathetic to Islam and to those in the borderlands of the Christian West, but he was also keenly aware of the effect of Scripture, whether biblical or Quranic, on the politics, motivations, and aspirations of nations and empires. At the same time, Jefferson was perhaps influenced by the moral humanitarian elements of the Quran and, as mentioned above, the Constitution of Medina, which may have accompanied his study of Islam. We may never truly know what Jefferson thought about Islam, but what we know is that the Quran served not simply as an exotic book occupying the shelves of Jefferson's Monticello or Adams' Peacefield. On the contrary, the founding fathers knew about Islam and they thrust themselves into the necessity of knowing. If we excavate the volumes of documents authored by Jefferson and his contemporaries in the early days of the New Republic, we find moments wherein Jefferson's Quran may well have even influenced the founding, shaping, and sustenance of a newly sovereign nation. Okay, so now I'll read the Slate article that Stephen clearly wants me to read. So this was by Christopher Hitchens in 2007, the late Christopher Hitchens, who was, of course, no friend of Islam. It begins. It was quite witty of Republican Keith Ellison to short-circuit the hostility of those who criticized him for taking his oath on the Quran and to ask for the Library of Congress for the loan of Thomas Jefferson's copy of that holy book. But the irony of this, which certainly made his stupid Christian fundamentalist critics look even stupider, ought to be partly at his own expense as well. In the first place, concern over Ellison's political and religious background has little to do with his formal adherence to Islam. In his student days and subsequently, he was a supporter of Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam, a racist and crackpot cult organization that is in schism with the Muslim faith and even with the Sunni orthodoxy now preached by the sons of the Nation of Islam's popularizer Elijah Muhammad. Farrakhan's sect explicitly describes a large part of the human species, the so-called white part, as an invention of the devil and has issued tirades against the Jews that exceed what even the most fanatical Islamists have said. Farrakhan himself has boasted of the punishment meted out to Malcolm X by armed gangsters of the Nation of Islam. If Ellison now wants to use his faith to justify an appeal to pluralism and inclusiveness and diversity, he needs to repudiate the Nation of Islam, and in much more unambivalent terms than any I have yet heard from him. As to the invocation of Jefferson, we know that when he and James Madison first proposed a Virginia statute on religious freedom, the frame and basis of the later First Amendment to the Constitution in 1779, the preamble began, "Well aware that Almighty God hath created the mind free, Patrick Henry and other devout Christians attempted to substitute words Jesus Christ for Almighty God in this opening passage, and were overwhelmingly voted down. This vote was interpreted by Jefferson to mean that Virginia's representatives wanted the law to comprehend, within the mantle of its protection, the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan, the Hindu and infidel of every denomination. Quite right too, and so far so good, even if the term Mohammedan would not be used today, and even if Jefferson's own private sympathies were with the last named in that list." A few years later, in 1786, the new United States found that it was having to deal very directly with the tenets of the Muslim religion. The Barbary states of North Africa, or if you prefer, the North African provinces of the Ottoman Empire plus Morocco, were using the ports of today's Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia to wage a war of piracy and enslavement against all shipping that passed through the Strait of Gibraltar. Thousands of vessels were taken and more than 1 million Europeans and Americans sold into slavery. The fledgling United States of America was in an especially difficult position, having forfeited the protection of the British Royal Navy. Under this pressure, Congress gave assent to the Treaty of Tripoli, negotiated by Jefferson's friend Joel Barlow, which stated roundly that the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Mussulmen. This has often been taken as a secular affirmation, which it probably was, but the difficulty for secularists is that it also attempted to buy off the Muslim pirates by the payment of tribute. That this might not be so easy was discovered by Jefferson and John Adams when they went to call on Tripoli's envoy to London, Ambassador Sidi Haji Abdurrahman. They asked him by what right he extorted money and took slaves in this way. As Jefferson later reported to the Secretary of State John Jay and to the Congress, the ambassador answered us that the right was founded by the laws of the prophet, and that it was written in their Quran that all nations who should not have answered their authority were sinners, and it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Mussulman who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. Medieval as it is, this has a modern ring to it. Abdurrahman did not fail to add that a commission paid directly to Tripoli, another paid to himself, would secure some temporary lenience. I believe on the evidence that it was at this moment that Jefferson decided to make war on the Muslim states of North Africa as soon as the opportunity presented itself. And even if I'm wrong, we can be sure that the dispatch of the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps to the Barbary shore was the first and most important act of his presidency. It took several years of bombardment before the practice of kidnap and piracy and slavery was put down. But put down it was, Quranic justification or not. Jefferson did not demand regime change of the Barbary states, only policy change, and as far as I can find, he avoided any comment on the religious dimension of the war, but then he avoided public comment on faith whenever possible. It was not until long after his death that we became able to read most of his scornful writings on Revelation and Rejection. And it was not until long after his death that the life and morals of Jesus of Nazareth was publishable, sometimes known as the Jefferson Bible for short. This consists of the 4 Gospels of the New Testament as redacted by our third president, with literally a razor blade in his hand. With this blade he excised every verse dealing with virgin birth, miracles, resurrection, and other puerile superstition, thus leaving him and us with a very much shorter book. In 1904, those were the days the Jefferson Bible was printed by order of Congress, and for many years was presented to all newly elected members of that body. Here's a tradition worth reviving. Why not ask all new members of Congress to swear on that? And here's a tradition worth inaugurating. The Quran repeats and plagiarizes many passages of the New Testament. Really? Citation required. Christopher Hitchens, including some of the most fantastic and mythical ones. Is it not time to apply the razor and produce a reasonable Quran as well? What could be more inclusive? What could be a better application of Jefferson's original intent? Well, my ready answer to that suggestion was that Jefferson was actually inviting people to come to that conclusion. Yeah, trying to do to the Quran what Jefferson did to the Bible. And you'll still be left with secular Koranism. That's what you'd be left with. That's what you'd be left with. And that will do. Because as you know, if you've been paying attention, secular Koranism doesn't care about the stories or the promises and threats from God. It's only about do's and don'ts that you're supposed to enact in your laws, in the law of the land. So Christopher Hitchens' idea is actually quite a good one. I wonder how many people will discuss this. They don't seem able to discuss anything sensible for long. So thank you for that. I know I did read it some time ago, but it's good to have one's memory refreshed. Are Masons now accepted by the Vatican effluent? Domingo is still going on about the rabbinate. The Muslims are pretty corrupt. I mean, I don't even know why you single out the Jews. It's like you can't find any Muslim in academia prepared to engage with me. They're not, right? They can't do it. The rabbis can't do it. There's no point talking to the Christians because all these Muslims have been co-opted. They're too afraid to even be seen to be talking to me. In fact, judging by the hysterical fear factor on E.F. Dawa, they kind of know that they're not supposed to talk to me or engage with me. And I can give you the name of a few Muslim YouTubers who won't talk to me. So they've all been co-opted. I mean, but of course, Domingo, being the anti-Semite he is, he's just going to concentrate on the Jews. There are lots of people who won't talk to me, and they're not all Jewish. They're just unprincipled cucks who, I guess, are afraid of having their channel given a strike or whatever. But yes, of course, Domingo would keep concentrating on Jews. The Muslims are no better. The Muslims have a clearer command in the Quran in chapter 18, verse 4, but have they been obeying it? Of course not. So actually, the Muslims have even less of an excuse. I mean, the Jews might say, well, we don't feel safe. We don't feel safe telling Christians that their religion is idolatry and blasphemy. And you can have a bit of sympathy for that. And also they can say, well, there's nothing in the Torah that says we have to do it. There's nothing in the Torah that says we have to do it. And there isn't, to be fair to them.
And then you can say, oh, but you're supposed to teach in no-hide laws. And it's like, well, does it really say that? Does it really say in the Torah that we're supposed to be, teaching the no-hide laws? Yeah, it says something about us being light unto the nations, but that's not the Torah part of the Old Testament. It's in what was it? Proverbs or something? Proverbs or Psalms.
Where does it say light unto the nations? I know. So, and Isaiah was not from God. But chapter 18, verse 4 does come from God, and Muslims, and it's like these Muslims they're far more than Jews. Jews are only 0.1% of their total human population. So, maybe we're expecting a bit much from them, and they're just as degenerate, really, aren't they? They're all submitting to liberalism, bowing to the idol of liberalism, like most Gentiles are, too afraid to question it, not going, just still talking about fighting elections like they haven't got it yet. So maybe, maybe these Muslims are even worse. I mean, they've got less of an excuse. And there's so many more Muslims than there are Jews, and it's so clear in the Quran. Chapter 18, verse 4, admonish those who claim that God has begotten the Son. So I think in terms of having an excuse for being, cut, scared, unprincipled, I think the Muslims have less of an excuse. I'm going to tell you something horrible about you probably won't like me hearing that, but I've had turtle eggs. It's delicious, but not for a long time. Okay, so we're talking about Alice and Chavez. I was trying to find out what's happened to her. When you have somebody and you think, I should sort of start the conversation like, how are you? And not have you heard from her about Alison? So I kind of did the usual, how are you? And actually, I know how I hate these how are you questions. It's like, it just puts me into a sense of, into an existential crisis when I'm asked, how are you, Claire? Oh, I don't know. Don't ask me these questions because it might upset me if I think too much about how I am. Okay, so just something else that's unfair to Jews. Only Jews get away with legislating thought. Oh, come on, it's just so ridiculous. Oh, you haven't read 1984? You haven't read 1984? You don't know about Soviet totalitarianism? You're not aware that Christians would burn each other at the stake for denying the divinity of Jesus? It's gone out of your mind, hasn't it, Domingo? Yeah, I watched the Charles Moskowitz stream with Adam Green and Duvid, and it's just so frustrating. I mean, Charles is the worst interviewer in the world, and he's really clueless. And I think he would actually seem more intelligent if he didn't tell people he was Jewish. And I just find it just really extremely irritating. I know I have no business feeling irritated, but it's like when you think, but you're just not Jewish. You shouldn't even call yourself Jewish. Oh, Domingo wants to talk to me. Domingo wants to talk to me. Yay! It's a lot to say to me. Haven't you, Domingo, dear? Okay. Hello.
Claire.
Hello. How nice to hear your voice.
Waking up on a Saturday morning, listening to you go on about Christianity, it's not the ideal way to start a Saturday morning. But earlier I overheard you talk about how you're distraught and dismayed about how you've tried your best to protect the Jews, but you're realizing now that the rabbis, they're not interested in doing what they're supposed to do.
It's not just a dude.
Have you come?
Like
No, 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 no.
Everybody.
Let me finish. Have you come to terms yet, Claire? Have you accepted the fact that the rabbinate don't give a shit? Can we at least agree on this, Claire? Can we agree that all three of the Abrahamic faiths have been usurped, hijacked, taken over, corrupted by criminal, degenerate deviants?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're prepared to accept that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's clear what's happened.
Okay. So, if
including
I did say all three Abrahamic religions.
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared to concede that.
Okay. So does this mean we give up?
So now that once we can agree that the common denominator is corruption,
yes.
Right? Bad people.
Mm.
Should we not then examine who these bad people are and what elements of society, what ethnic groups they stem from?
No, because it's unconstructive, because the enemy is within, because we know what Muhammad said about the greater jihad is the struggle with oneself. And there's also this idea of the evil inclination that exists in all of us. And I don't think we can escape. I mean, we kind of know how people are when they don't want to accept something. They shoot the messenger. They
Well,
pretend they
Claire, look,
haven't heard, they don't understand, whatever.
listen, Claire, you just said it's unconstructive to examine what and who these criminal elements are that have corrupted these three religions. Listen to what you just said.
Because I
You-
know that
you
there
want
will
to
be
put
people
on-
within those societies who did it to themselves. Every society has its own internal enemies.
Okay, but are you saying that we should not even bother to take a moment to examine and even introspect, to examine ourselves? I'm not against that, but I'm simply saying, when it comes to these organized religions, when it comes to corporations that go corrupt or governments, can we not examine what this criminal element is?
Well, okay. I've said that corruption is ignoring and denying the truth, and
It's
I'm
a little
afraid.
more. Well, it's a little more than that.
Yeah, I know I know you want to single out a particular group, and
No.
I just don't
I'm
want to
just
be seen
saying.
to
I'm
be
just
doing
saying your.
that.
I'm just saying your definition of corruption is a little bit limited.
Well, actually, it's wider because it actually extends to a lot of people, some of whom have been and are still my friends. It's like there are lots of people that I talk to and have been talking to for a long time who pretend they don't know what I'm going on about, and they
To
know they
ignore,
have no
to ignore,
arguments.
to ignore and deny the truth. That is one component. But I would go as far as to say that true corruption is the fabrication of lies.
Of
It would,
course, that would be much worse. Yes, active lying would be, obviously worse, and making fraudulent, telling lies and all that.
telling lies
But
and having
it's actually bad enough when people, you're trying to tell somebody something they don't want to hear, something they don't want to know about, and they will. I'm sure you've done this. This isn't just politics, right? It isn't just politics. You tell somebody about something that really they should be doing, and they don't want to do it, and they'll just pretend, they'll forget, they'll not get it, they'll say it doesn't need to be done. I mean, all these excuses, I have done it myself.
kind of like how when Christians explain to you why Christianity is not idolatrous. You mean like that?
But I know what their defense is, and I'm saying it doesn't hold water.
No, you're saying you just don't accept it. You're just saying you reject
I don't
it.
accept it.
Yeah. You do what you just described other people of doing.
Yeah, and I'm at least acknowledging that I can understand the psychology of people who want to deny the truth, because they, if you're saying, if you accept
Right.
the premise, then it means you have to do the thing, and you really don't want to do it. So
at least you
premise.
acknowledge and you recognize your innate need to deny Christ, and so you're going to do it. You're going to keep on denying him. But that means that you're guilty of it too. Therefore, really, why should anybody listen to you?
Well, because I'm more honest than most, and what I'm trying to do is also say, you've been annoying me for all these years because I know you're scared, and I know you're a bit stupid, and you think I can't make you because I don't have an army. But can you just stop and just behave as if you did believe in God and are afraid of his punishment? And this applies to Christians in particular. It's like, even Christians know that idolatry is a mortal sin.
You want people to pretend to believe in God.
No, I want them to understand the logic of this belief system, and there are competing belief systems, right? Because
forget the Hindus and the Buddhists. Basically, the competition is within these three Abrahamic faiths. And basically, there's just two, because Jews are just, well, only 0.1% of the people, and half of them don't even want to be Jewish. But there are two competing Gentile faiths, Christianity and Islam. And I'm saying that Western history in the past 250 years has been about rejecting Christianity. In the American, French, and Russian revolutions, is just been doing this. It's like this is not how your history has been presented to you. But if you think about it,
I do agree that history as it is presented in the mainstream is completely wrong. Well, not totally wrong, but has a lot of problems with it. I'll agree with you there.
yes, thank you.
I'm a staunch supporter
you
of
have all these Westerners who
revisionist.
don't understand
I'm a
their own
staunch
history.
supporter of revisionist history, as you know.
Yeah, but it's a principle of the thing that should, send alarm bells ringing, because there is a post-war narrative that has become sacred, and Alison, without realizing it, became a heretic. And the thing is, she thought it was safe for her to deny the Holocaust or joke about the Holocaust, because she thought in the UK there is no law against Holocaust denial. But the fact is that the rule of law is breaking down. And by that I mean that the people who administered and enforce the law are openly corrupt and openly change the rules, or openly ignore the rules, or don't enforce them evenly. And we see it all the time, every day.
Yes. And when it comes to Holocaust denial laws and rules, they can be traced back to a certain tribe.
Okay, my theory about it. I was saying, okay, if I were Jewish and it's like, okay, we're going to big out the Holocaust and make these Europeans who've been mean to us for centuries so guilty, they're going to give us our promised land. And this happens to be the British, and the British are, have had their noses broken in their stupid imperial wars, and they can't hang on much longer in the Palestine Mandate. So that was basically what the Jews did. I mean, King David bomb and all that. So it's like they've already got their thing, right? They've got their thing. They've got their homeland. It's like, yeah, we've done it. We don't need to go on about the Holocaust anymore. But for the West, Britain needs to think, oh my God, we just lost our fucking empire over this.
Yeah,
shit.
but you're wrong. You're wrong about the Palestinian Mandate. The British didn't have trouble holding on to it. The British soldiers were pressured into standing down because they could have easily crushed that Jewish terrorist element.
Yeah, they did. Basically, they didn't want to be there anyway, and they were on their way out.
No, that's not true. That's not true. You're wrong.
Okay, I'm not going. Okay, I'm not good.
The British had very good. The British had very good relations with the Arabs. That is well documented. Your problem is you are in denial.
About what?
About the nature of rabbinical Judaism and the nature of tribal, ethnic, organized Jewish crime.
Am I wrong in thinking that the Jews calculated that the British would not be there for very long, and they would just, blow up a few places to get them to leave quicker? That was the whole point of the King David Hotel bomb, wasn't it?
The King David Hotel was bombed because British intelligence was conducting an investigation from that hotel. They were based in it. And their investigation would reveal that Ben Gurion and Begin had conspired together to assassinate Lord Moyne.
Why?
Because political opponents to the Zionist movement had to get killed.
Okay, so who was Lord Moyne?
Well, this is my point, Claire. I've told you this story at least a dozen times.
Okay,
I've told you the story at least a dozen times. You've never bothered to even look into it.
I don't remember.
Well, I mean, I don't.
Tell it to us again.
Why? So that you can ask me again 2 weeks from now to re-explain it?
Maybe because people have very short memories.
No, I think you're being disingenuous.
No,
I think you
I
have.
genuinely don't
I think you
remember
have.
the story, and I want you to tell me, and you're just being annoying. I don't know the story. I don't know who
I
Lord
think
Boyd is.
you.
I don't know why they want to assassinate him.
I think you should be
Maybe
open and
he'll
honest.
be.
I think you should be open and honest, right? If you're not corrupt, if I think you should be open and honest and explain to the viewers why you hate Christians and explain all the bad instances that you've had in your life with Christians and how they've let you down, right?
No, I'm not complaining about bad treatment by Christians. I certainly don't. I didn't say Christians treated me bad. In
Oh,
fact, I don't really care any Christians. I don't care any Christians.
Jay hasn't let you down, monumentally disappointed you,
Yes, he did.
and you haven't had similar experiences with other Christians.
No, I'm just sick and tired of talking to people who don't care about what they say.
Well, look, I mean, you just said it yourself. The rabbis don't seem to care. You've tried to convince them. So, what do you propose, Claire? I mean, let me ask you this. Would you be willing to at least remove this idea of having Jews rank the religions in your secular
And
Koranism?
instead do what? And instead do what? What idea do you want me to have?
Perhaps
Do you have a competing better idea?
Perhaps abolish the idea of the freedom to practice any religion whatsoever under the rule of secular Koranism. Would you be prepared to abolish the
No.
idea? Why?
Because I believe in it. I actually like it.
But it creates conflicts of interest.
Look, you have to understand that if you tell people not to do something, they'll want to do it even more. It's like, don't believe in this stupid conspiracy theory. You're gonna, people will just want to do it more. Don't you understand the reverse psychology of it? So if you say, well, we're going to shut down your temples and your churches and your whatever, they'll just go crazy, and there'll be terrorism all over the place. So
then they'll no, Claire.
And then eventually they'll just get tired of it.
But
Claire, tired of doing this
Claire,
stupid
if you have a minority that's insisting on having their temples or their altars and shrines, don't you think that it would be wise to simply have those people removed from your borders?
No, because if I'm not going to be the one saying, "Oh, pogrom here, pogrom there, everywhere."
Not pogrom, deportation.
Same thing. Same thing. Anyway,
I'm not talking about setting up camps or putting them in ghettos. I'm saying ship them off. Send them to the countries. Send them to the countries where they can practice the religion that they love so much.
Look, my register.
You see, Claire, you're Claire.
It will do
Claire,
the job.
You're the liberal,
you
Claire.
Just can't wait, can you?
You're the liberal. You're the liberal, Claire.
What
Don't
do
you see it? Don't you see it, Claire? That your secular Koranism is liberal?
Yeah, it's a liberal thing.
It's a multi-culti, freedom to practice any religion, faggot state.
Yeah, but the unmarried parents will be treated as sex offenders.
No, that's not
and
true.
And lashed 100 times per bastard. That I have to go by the book. You can't tempt me into saying, oh, just redact a few verse here and ignore a few of that verse there.
You told look. First of all, you told Vincent that you would accommodate his homosexual breeding camps. You also, an incestuous, might I add. You also said that you would
say that.
You also said that you would allow slaves.
I never said I would accommodate his breeding camps.
You did. You did. You absolutely did.
No. I obviously I had to, I allowed him to say what he planned on my stream, but I never said, oh, I support you. Never. Don't tell
So
lies.
so you would so what would you do with parents, unmarried parents?
100 lashes per bastard in public.
Lashes to the parents, you mean?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then what?
And then
Are
they'll
they
know
going
not
to?
to do it. Eventually, people will think, oh, I don't want to be lashed 100 times in a public place where my friends and family can see me in the shopping mall, town square, village, green, whatever.
Are they going to be lashes, true lashes that break the skin and cause them to bleed?
No, there's no need. I mean, how they do it in Archer is good enough. I mean, it's like a
So
caning,
so
a
it's
school
just
caning.
it's just going to be pretend lashing.
No, it'll hurt, it will humiliate. There's no need to really hurt them. It's like, yeah, it's bad enough. You're on a stage and you're going to be whacked 100 times. It's not the pain that you're worried about. It'll be, oh my God, everybody's going to see me, and mom and dad, what will they think, and my kids? Oh no.
But Claire, you do realize that some people are absolutely shameless and they're going to laugh at your lashing ritual if it doesn't hurt.
Well,
Prison
we'll see
prison
what
can
happens. We'll see what
prison
happens.
cannot be a day spa, otherwise criminals will be incentivized to go to prison.
Yeah, exactly. And corporal punishment will be cheaper because you can punish lots of people by lashing them in public, and instead of incarcerating them.
If you're gonna burn a witch, Claire, you burn her. You don't pretend to burn her.
I don't want to
If
burn
you
anyone.
if you want to, if you really want to, no, I'm making a point here. If you really want to make sure that people are discouraged from practicing witchcraft, you don't pretend to burn the witch. You burn the witch.
I have no plans to burn anyone, and I think people will be sufficiently humiliated by being lashed 100 times per bastard. I mean, it's just so unheard of that people go ape when I talk about it.
Claire, would gay pride parades be legal under secular Koranism?
No.
Why?
Because they would be encouraging, inciting people to break chapter 4, verse 16 of the Quran.
Okay, but what if homosexuals decide to invent a religion in which homosexuality is sacred? Are you going to allow them to worship and practice their religion?
No, because that would be against the law. They would be inciting the breaking of,
so then you won't allow the practice of any religion. You'll just allow the practices of religions that have been chosen by secular Koranism.
Yeah, there'll be approved religions. You can't just sort of say, "Oh, I want a religion against secular Koranism and for the destruction of their core," or things like that. That wouldn't be allowed. Of course, that would be openly subversive.
So you're liberal, but with limits.
I have my limits. I admit that.
Yeah. Well, I'm clearly not a liberal, and I think if you're going to have a nation that is going to be unified,
eventually it will happen, Domingo. You just mustn't push these things or it'll blow up in your face. I mean, look at Hitler. He couldn't wait. Napoleon couldn't wait. And it just blew up in their faces and they died.
No, Hitler was doing fine. Hitler was doing fine until the British decided to declare war on him.
Yeah, he was doing fine after they declared war on him. And then he found himself with a war on two fronts. So
yeah, and what do those two fronts have in common? What criminal subversive element do those two fronts have in common?
I have no idea what you mean. I mean, obviously, whatever, whether they be Jew or Gentile, you don't want to fight a war on two fronts. I mean, that's the danger point for Germany.
Claire,
it couldn't go.
You're in denial, Claire. You're just in denial. You should
I
you
don't
should
want.
move.
I
You
don't
should
want to
move.
come across as vindictive. I want to be, I want people to think I'm nice and reasonable and kind and forgiving, and I want to come out. I want them to come out with their hands in the air, but not necessarily thinking I'm going to shoot them.
But they're not going to take you seriously if they don't think you're going to shoot.
Well, they know that, basically that they're going to be in trouble with their God if they don't do what I say. And if they don't, then they would be atheists. And then God, if he exists, would be even angrier with them. All these sort of Jews and Christians and Muslims only pretending to believe in God and not really. And really submitting to liberalism, which is disgraceful and on its way out.
Well, I think secular Koranism is liberalism by another name.
But at least it has, it does go by the book. It will be interpreted liberally, of course. I mean, the First Amendment.
Well, it's going by the wrong book. It's going by the wrong book.
Well, it's got to be a holy book, or people will not respect it. I mean, if I wrote a book, nobody would respect it. But if it's from the Quran, they go, "Oh yeah, we heard of that."
Yeah, but Claire, there's a lot of people that are burning Qurans. I mean, let's face it. There's a lot of people that do not respect the Quran.
Yeah, I know, but at least they know what it is, and it can be found online easily for free, and
But wouldn't you agree though that maybe you chose the wrong book?
What book do you want me to choose?
Well, what book has sold the most? Not sold, but rather what book has been printed the most?
I don't know.
Of the holy books.
You're going to say the Bible, right?
Well, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's failed. It's like it's so unbelievable. So if you want a religion, you want a religion that worships the most powerful God, right? You want that because it seems to work for the Jews, and then you want a religion whose rules are kind of easy to follow and give the group a sense of its own identity, and then you want a religion that actually is easy to believe, and I think you have that in spades in the Quran.
I don't understand this easy to believe bullshit. What is this?
Well,
when did faith or belief in God require when was there levels of like effort behind this?
Well, you know what Jen has been trying to do, don't you? She's basically saying, God is the universe, and because we already know the universe exists, and God exists. That's what she's saying. That's her reasoning.
Yes, but she also redefines terms and plays with words, and she also redefines things like consciousness. So I don't care what Jen says because a lot of it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but we I think we can understand why she does it. She people are into pantheism because basically they still want to believe in God, right? They still do. So after all this rejecting of the Abrahamic God, and they only reject the Abrahamic God because they don't want to follow his laws. And the first pantheist was really Spinoza, who was a Jew in Amsterdam, who said, "I don't want to do this anymore, but I kind of still want to believe in God, and I'm going to write a book about how wonderful it is to believe in God, even though it's not the Abrahamic God who knows our minds and answers prayers." And it's like the universe is beautiful enough. I can be already wowed by it. But I don't have to follow his laws because I don't want to be Jewish, and I certainly don't want to be Christian, and I can't be Muslim in Amsterdam at the time. So, but anyway, he kind of created an idol for himself, and he was just obviously happy enough with it. And
would he be allowed to? Would Spinoza be allowed to practice his beliefs under secular Koranism?
Yes, of course, because secular Koranism.
But it's idolatry, according to you.
Yeah, and I've also said that idolatry can be practiced by believing Jews and Muslims praying correctly, because idolatry is not just an act, it's a state of mind.
So you're picking and choosing which rules can be violated and which rules have to be adhered to based entirely on your own biases, based entirely on your own prejudices.
How am I being prejudiced? I'm being so broad-minded about everything. And
you just said that Jews and Muslims are allowed to be idolatrous.
No, everybody's allowed to be be atheist or whatever. I'm not going to be closing down any Hindu temples.
But you would ban a religion that practices homosexuality.
Yeah, because it's against the no-hide laws.
But so is idolatry.
Yeah,
idolatry being the number one law of the Noahide laws, right?
Okay, but this is how it works. I get rabbis to rank the Gentile religions, and then they're going to say, well, Islam, it's not good enough, it's not strict enough.
And by the way, there's your prejudice. You get rabbis to rank the religions. There's your prejudice number one.
Well, who do you expect me to get to rank?
Why not an atheist?
It's a Jewish idea. So
why not an atheist?
Yeah, because an atheist would believe in it. I mean, it's like
an atheist could rank them objectively.
Yeah, they could rank, but they wouldn't have the authority that's required from God's chosen people. You have to approach it.
See, look at Effluent for you in the chat. Domingo, she got on the fence again. Claire retreats to the fence, her liberal fence, every now and then. Yeah. You're lacking integrity, Claire.
No, it has to go through the Jews because it's a no-hide laws. It's their idea.
But you just said that they get to. Wait a minute.
It's not their thing.
So you want them to rank the religions, but you're also going to give them a free pass on idolatry?
No, this is how I want it to work. So what the rabbis will probably say is that some of them will say, yes, Islam is absolutely no-hide, or there'll be ones who say, well, it's not quite no-hide. And it's like, it doesn't matter as long as it is the closest thing to being no-hide, whether you think it's on the line or under the line or even over the line. It's like, it's out of all the Gentile religions, it's the most no-hide. And that's good enough for me. And anyway, the Quran also says things like, why waste your time worshipping idols that cannot harm or help you? So it has expressed disapproving things about idolaters, but it doesn't prescribe punishment, which is quite correct. Because there is in the Hadith the idea that hidden idolatry can be practiced by believing Muslims and believing Jews. It's like when your mind during your prayers wanders and you're not actually worshiping God.
You're saying there's a book somewhere. You're saying there's a written text somewhere written by people that said, I can break my own rules if I feel like it.
No, my reasoning is this, that sometimes you just can't help your thoughts from wandering and maybe thinking, improper thoughts while you're supposed to be praying. And I think people do acknowledge that. So if even Jews and Muslims can be guilty of hidden idolatry, they have no right to be punishing, actual open idolaters. So I think that's fair enough.
Would secular Koranism ban the practice of oral section circumcision by the Jews?
No, it's not going to ban that. But eventually there'll be fewer and fewer of them, because there's nothing in the Quran that says victimize these Jews and stop them from circumcising their babies. And in fact, Muslims
you're going to permit Jews to continue to torture and rape babies, even pass on herpes and kill them. You're going to turn a blind eye to this.
I don't know. I mean, are you saying that rabbis rape babies?
I'm saying they mutilate and rape babies.
How do they rape babies?
By sucking the bloodied, mutilated penis.
That's not rape, is it? Okay, I mean, you obviously think
Well,
that's rape. I thought
folks,
rape
I
was
hope you record. I hope you recorded that, folks, because we've got a soundbite.
what? What did I say?
Well, you don't think that sucking? First of all, you're okay with mutilating a baby. Secondly, you're okay with a rabbi putting his filthy fucking mouth onto that mutilated penis
It's
and sucking
up
the
to
blood
me to
from it.
say. It's up to the parents of the male infant concerned to say. So it's nothing to do with me. And as I understand it,
So you have so
it
then
is
you
an
have
ancient
so then
practice.
your morals are lacking.
No, I just don't want to. You obviously want to ban male
Claire,
circumcision because of your
are you against
antipathy towards
torture,
Jews.
Claire? Are you
Hmm?
against torture, Claire?
I think it's really so hypocritical of you to pretend that you care about the foreskins of the male infants of the people you want to kick out of your country.
I think torturing and raping babies is wrong, even if they're Jewish.
Well, it's obviously not harmed them.
Not harm them. Babies have died from it.
Oh, well, I don't think you really care.
Well, that's not a valid comeback. That's not a valid
Well, I mean,
argument.
it's a risk that their parents took and their babies died. So I guess, you
You know,
can
you know
gloat
what
about
else?
it if you
You
want.
know what else I'm against, Claire? I'm against Orthodox baptisms, Christian Orthodox baptisms. I'm against those.
What, how, what are they?
They're basically taking babies and dunking them, submerging them underwater vigorously and repeatedly. And babies have died of drowning during those types of baptisms. It's basically waterboarding babies, and I'm against it.
When did that practice start?
I'm not sure when it started, but it's been around for a heck of a long time.
Really? I think I thought it was something a newfangled thing, but you're saying it's a Christian practice.
Catholics will drop a little bit of water on top of the baby's head, but Orthodox Christians will take the baby and literally dunk them into a dark barrel full of water, fully submerge them, pull them out, bring them back in, pull them out, bring them back in. And in some instances, what they'll do is they'll even grab the baby and sort of like from a, left to right or right to left motion, just sort of just push the baby through the water over and over again. It's traumatic to watch. I mean, clearly the babies are not enjoying it at all.
Right. Is it called Chrismation?
It's simply it's Orthodox. Look up Russian Orthodox baptisms and Greek Orthodox baptisms.
Okay, but this one's it sort of sounds more like anointing something. So,
But babies have died of drowning during these practices.
okay, I kind of don't care if they, if these
But
people want
that's
to
my
do
point,
that.
Claire. That's my point. You don't care if elements of society are torturing babies. And that is wrong, Claire.
No, it's like
It's
it's a
wrong for
stupid.
you.
If you want to do these things, I'm not going to get upset about what you do. You want to do it. You want to traumatize your baby. Anyway, they don't do it in my country. They don't do it in your country either.
Which country?
These you don't live in a country where you have these crazy practices.
On the contrary. On the contrary, Claire. They happen in your country and in mine.
This dunking donuts thing. All right. I mean, okay.
Yes, Claire. I've seen it with my own eyes.
Is it on YouTube? Maybe we can watch it together.
There are plenty of clips on YouTube that demonstrate this.
All right. And how do I look it up?
I'll send you one. Hang on, I'll find one. But
Make
the
sure it's as
Metitza,
traumatic as you can find.
the MBP oral suction circumcision, it takes place all over the West because Jews are allowed to get away with it.
Okay, so Stephen is still going on. What I've never genuinely understood is why they're so concerned about the Noahide laws, which originated from some old rabbi's imagination written in the Talmud. Well, Stephen, I think it's fair enough. I think that the Noahide laws are fair enough, and I think the only people who object to it would be Christians or anti-Semites.
Claire, I just posted the link in the chat. Take a look at that.
Okay, all right. Then we can all watch it together. Right. It's a 1 minute thing. Yes. Okay. Let me do the sharing thing. Share screen. I think I've seen this before anyway, but I think some people might like it. It's in Georgia.
This particular example, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Claire, how would you like it if I did that to you, Claire?
It's done very quickly and professionally.
Oh, really? I guess that's why babies have died from drowning, right? Because it's so quick and professional.
Well, I think there's a certain skill.
Do you think that baby has a? Do you think that baby has a chance to sort of catch its breath while it's being while it's having that done to it?
To sort of have it over and done with before it even realizes that it's of what's been done. Would you prefer to have that done to you or to be circumcised?
Claire, do you not realize what's taking place there?
What is that process called?
Claire, that's a baptism.
Yeah, okay. Okay, this mass baptism was an invention of the patriarch of all Georgia, Ilya, seen to be one of the most influential men in the country. So
do you know what the Greeks do, Claire? The Greeks have big metal drums, okay, full of water, and what they do, the priest, he grabs the baby, dunks it down into the barrel, fully submerged, and keep in mind when the baby's screaming, this is a big dark barrel. There's no light in there, and the baby's hearing echoes of its own screams reverberating inside this drum, and he's being dunked.
Have you got a video for that?
I'm trying to tell you, Claire, I've witnessed this myself.
Really? What kind of people do you know do this
Claire,
sort of thing? That's
Claire,
disgusting. How do you know these people?
Claire, admit it. You enjoy watching babies suffer.
Do you have a video for this barrel thing that you're talking about?
Why? So that you can get aroused by watching it?
No, because I want to. I just, obviously, it doesn't actually kill the baby, and it upsets a few people. But
Claire, I guarantee you that if I were to do that to you, in that manner,
an adult would be different.
You would want to have me killed if I did that to you.
Well, of course, I'd be angry. I mean, you do that to an adult, you might hurt the person. But babies are kind of different. They're quite resilient in their own way.
Oh my God.
But anyway, so this person is some kind of cult person, right?
What do you mean cult person?
Because
I'm trying to tell you, Claire. This is across the board Russian and Greek Orthodox. The
Mass baptism
Armenians.
was an invention of the patriarch of all Georgia, Ilya III.
No,
So,
that's referring to the mass baptism. That's the idea of doing one after the other in succession. But the baptism itself, but that style of baptism itself is an Orthodox baptism, and the Armenians probably do it too.
but what about this thing called Chrismation? Because I've looked it up.
I don't know what
Chrismation
I don't know
is
what
something that it's all quite sedate. You kind of wash the baby's feet and ointment or something. And
I don't know about that. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, I'll send you the link about Chrismation, which is a kind of one-off thing. So there doesn't need to be a confirmation ceremony.
Chrismation sounds like something you want Jen to do to you.
I don't know. It sounds like. What do you think it sounds like?
Or maybe it's something you want to do. Maybe it's something you want to do to Jen.
I don't particularly want to do. Okay.
Rubbing ointment on each other's feet.
No, gosh, no. I bet her feet are enormous.
Massaging each other's corns.
Ugh. Okay. So basically,
scissoring each other throughout the night.
The priest anoints the recipient with chrism, making the sign of the cross on the forehead, eyes, nostrils, mouth, ears, breast, hands, and feet, using the following words each time.
Chrism?
Seal of the gift of the Holy Spirit.
Did you say chrism?
Yeah, that's what it says.
That sounds rather similar to jism.
With chrism. So the chrism is some kind of
ointment. Sounds a lot like jism to me.
I don't know what you mean. Anyway, it's an ointment. It's an ointment, obviously.
Ointment indeed.
Yeah. So the chrism is washed off by a priest 7 days later, according to the written rubrics, the newly baptized wearing their white chittons and not washing their anointed.
I'm sorry. Did you say chittons?
Okay, I don't. Chiton. Okay, it's spelled Chiton. It's a form of tunic that fastens at the shoulder, worn by men and women of ancient Greece and Rome.
I mean, I can tell you without a doubt that I do not want to get shit on.
Well, that's what it is. It's a kind of thing like a toga or something that people in ancient Greece and Rome would wear. I'll put the link in. Gosh, I didn't think it'd be so educational. I don't know. Maybe it's pronounced Chiton. Chiton, maybe. Chiton. Yeah. So it's a kind of Greek dress thing. But anyway, yeah. So for Chrismation, you basically get your feet and your breast and your eyes and nostrils, mouth and ears and hands and feet anointed, and your forehead, and then the priest says the seal of the gift of the Holy Spirit, and then 7 days later you wash it off.
Maybe it's like ashes mixed with wine or something.
Yeah, and apparently they do it this way to do away with this second ceremony, about being confirmed, and you don't even remember though you were confirmed. It just shows what an impression it made on you. So I guess
shut up, Claire. At least I believe in God, godless woman.
Well, I'm not quite sure what image comes to mind when you pray to God. Do you see a man on a cross, or do you think of something greater and far more mysterious than that?
Something greater and far more mysterious, a greater authority that I don't truly understand.
Well, that's better. So I think it makes you kind of closer to being Muslim and away from being Christian. So you might as well accept it and become a secular Koranist and help me a little bit. I'm trying to help you people. I feel a little alone in doing this.
Well, you are alone in doing this.
Yeah, and I still want to do
The
it
the
because
Muslims want nothing to do with you. The rabbinate clearly is not listening, and
yeah.
Christians hate you because you hate them.
Well, I hate the thing that's been done to them. I mean, if my relations were Christians, I'd be so angry. It's like, wow, they forcibly converted you and then they threatened you and burned you at the stake if you denied the divinity of Jesus. It just traumatized me so badly. And I feel kind of vengeful on those unfortunate people who've been burned at the stake just for saying, I'm not going to believe in this absurdity. I feel that
Maybe,
somehow these people
maybe
need to be avenged or at least acknowledged that they're suffering acknowledged now. And it's just shocking that nobody cares.
I'm thinking maybe you need to be waterboarded with holy water
Why?
because
I'm a nice
maybe
person. I'm trying to help you, and you just want horrible tortures for me for helping you. But this
because
is the lot of the
maybe that
prophet,
would
you see.
cleanse you. Maybe it would
Cleanse me
cleanse
of
you of.
what? You want me to be cleansed of truth, logic, and morality and become filthy with lies and nonsense
No,
like you.
cleanse you of the rabbinical demons that reside within you.
Well, I don't know why you're so anti-Semitic. I think it's twisted you. It's like your religion is about worshipping a Jew, and you also hate Jews. It's so difficult to understand all these contradictions in Christians. It's like, and then you have Islam that says, no, you
Jesus
don't
was
have to worship a Jew. You can still get to heaven without worshipping a Jew. Don't worry. And you still don't do it.
the type of Jew that Jesus was is not the type of Jews that we have today in the world.
Well, I'm sure they'd be different. I mean, um, um, Tudor English people wouldn't be exactly the same as people now in England.
Precisely.
Yeah. So what are you adding to the table when you?
What I'm saying is Jesus is not the king of today's Jews.
I thought you're supposed to believe that he is God.
Well,
You are very confused. You have to give up the idea of trying to worship God as Jesus or
no,
Jesus as God.
you just want me to renounce Christ. That's what you want me to do.
You can still love Jesus because Islam allows you to love Jesus and not acknowledge him as a prophet of God. You just can't worship him because that's idolatry. That's all. That's all I care about.
Yeah, but if the
You-
Jews and Muslims are going to be allowed to be idolatrous under secular Koranism, then so clearly so will Christians, right?
Yeah, they can go to their churches, but obviously, fewer and fewer of them will go. I mean, I guess some of them just do it for their music or whatever.
I think you're the one that's confused in that you're not sure if you want to make everyone atheists or if you want to make everyone religious. I
I
think
don't care
you're
what they think. They just have to obey the law. You can go to church. I don't care. If you want to go to a synagogue, I don't care either. I mean, it's just not a big deal.
under would Vincent be allowed to have incestuous gay sex under secular Koranism in the privacy of his own home?
Well, as long as he doesn't boast about it and announce orgies in
Well,
the local paper and
let let
invite everyone to
well,
come,
hang oh so
he
okay,
is
so hang on.
discreet about it.
Okay, so let's just begin with the idea: is he allowed to engage in incestuous homosexual sex in his home in private? Yes or no? Under secular Koranism.
Unless there are witnesses to him doing it, he should be okay. He can get away with it.
Would it be outlawed? Yes or no? Under secular
It's
Koranism.
technically against the law, but you're not allowed to, enter somebody's home to catch them having sex.
No. Claire, stop trying to twist this around. I'm not. This is the question I'm asking you. Okay, here's the hypothetical. Vincent Bruno is currently in his home. All of the blinds are drawn. No one can see through the windows, but he is engaging in homosexual, incestuous sex. Is Vincent Bruno breaking the law or not under secular Koranism?
No.
There you have it, folks.
Unless somebody photographs him, but then the photograph would have to be, not illegally obtained.
Well, it's a moot whether someone photographs it or not, because just the mere act of doing it in the privacy of his home is legal under secular Koranism. You just said it.
Yeah, because nobody's going to catch him, are they? Unless there's some sort of evidence, and the police aren't allowed to just sort of, crash in.
Unless someone suspects it of occurring.
Yeah, there could be some sort of search warrant or whatever, and I guess if somebody
Claire, for a search warrant to be issued would imply the criminal nature of the act.
Yeah,
but you just made it clear that it would not be a crime. It would not be illegal.
Well, the law is under secular Koranism would be looking away and not be prying in through your blackout curtains to see if you're having sex the right or wrong way. It's just not interested. I don't.
Yeah, that's what secular Koranism is. It's looking away.
Yeah, unless illegitimate offspring are produced. So
here's the thing. Vincent would then set up what he would call a fraternity, a private members only fraternity, and then members would show up, park their cars outside, and enter a very large building where all the windows have been painted over, and only members could enter. And then they would and that it is private property, and then they would engage in the most vile, incestuous, homosexual orgies, all the while being protected under secular Koranism.
Well, nobody would get to know about it, and I guess what we don't know about won't hurt us.
And there you have it, folks. Secular Koranism in a nutshell. Don't ask, don't tell. Secular Koranism, liberalism.
But it does lash unmarried parents 100 times per illegitimate offspring. And
not if the parents are keeping those children secret.
Well, it'll be hard to hide children away.
Well,
unless you're going to
only for a few months, it would be hard to hide only for no. But what I'm saying is, it would only be hard for a few months to hide the parental connection between said child and parent.
What do you mean? Somebody's going to say, "Is that your kid?"
And they'll say, "No, it's not my kid, but I am feeding it because I feel sorry for it."
Or then they can say, "Well,"
they'll say, "I don't know where the parents are. I found it on the street. Someone abandoned it."
Well, DNA tests are not exactly unknown.
Why would anyone want to submit to a DNA test to the state?
If they think that, if the police think you've committed a sexual offense of having babies without a marriage certificate, then they'll be doing a DNA test on you. and your
I see.
girlfriend.
I
And
see.
then you'll be
Okay.
both lashed publicly
And
in the
yes,
local shopping mall.
and then when people see the type of the type of ceremonial or sort of um ceremonial lashing, right? Not real lashing. Other would be offenders will simply look at each other and say, "Oh, we can have kids. Look, they're not really going to lash us, and it's only going to take a moment, and that's it. It's all over." So yeah, let's go ahead
Okay,
and
so you'd be quite happy for you and your girlfriend to be lashed 100 times in your local shopping mall, where your friends and family, doing the shopping, will see you being lashed 100 times. You'd be okay about that.
I would be. You know why? Because I'd be surrounded by other people who have been previously been lashed, and they'd be supporting me, morally supporting me, and laughing and scoffing at your lasher, right? And booing the lasher and cheering me.
I really don't think that's going to happen.
Because you're naive.
Well, if it ever were to happen that secular Koranism is adopted, then lots of attitudes will have changed. And it wouldn't be, the degenerates that you're talking about now who don't care what kind of sex anybody has. People will go, "Oh, let's get them. Let's eradicate the sort of thing because it's degenerate."
And then
Yeah.
over time, you would begin to notice that Vincent started accumulating more real estate and larger buildings with painted over windows. And then all of these illegitimate children that have that require these DNA tests, they would all be traced back to his incognito incestuous homosexual breeding camps. And because all the windows were painted over, and Secular Koranism said, "Well, I'm not going to look, but make sure you don't let me see it." And then Vincent, next thing you know, Vincent's taken over because he's been voted into presidency by all of his incestuous homosexual followers. And then
How many
I'm right.
brothers do you think he has? How many brothers do you think he has to have all
Well,
these orgies in
when
all
he's
these big
running,
black buildings?
Claire, when he's running his breeding
Is he
camps,
a spider?
he's just squeezing them out one by one with his breeding camps. So once he votes himself in with his own army of deviants, secular Koranism will become secular homosexualism.
Nonsense. Nonsense. I think you should give it a go. I think you already know I'm going to be quite strict about the rules. I'm not just going to, ignore this verse and forget about that verse just
Well,
because people like you think you have a special place in my heart, thinking you can just tell me to ignore it for your friends and whatever.
your lashings are going to have to be real, and they're going to
Yeah,
have to be the lashings will have to be performed by Major League Baseball
qualified
players.
lashes.
Major League Baseball players that are
Have
the
muscles.
the strongest bat swingers in the MLB. They are
I'll
the
give you
ones
the
that will
job.
have.
I'll give you the job of being administrator of corporal punishment. How would you like that?
I would not mind that. That is something I would consider.
Okay. And brothels would be legal. Does anybody want to be brothel inspectors? Is that a good job to have? Or do you want that job instead?
Brothel inspector. Uh,
I think life under secular Koranism could be quite fun. It wouldn't be this miserable dystopia that so many people will, assume it is.
it's a liberal Trojan horse, is what you're doing.
I think I'm just being sensible and compassionate. And there will be major changes, but it will be, well, tolerable and maybe even fun with opportunities for everyone.
That's what I like to think.
Here's my impression of Vincent. I have chosen to come out in support of eugenics and incest.
I don't think you've quite got the gay accent.
It's hard to, yeah, it's he, you know, I mean, ugh.
You can't do the gay accent. I'm surprised at you. You're such a good mimic usually.
I've chosen to come out in support of eugenics and incest.
Better.
I can't believe he hasn't come back here. And
yeah,
it seems like
he's been doing.
It seems like he's back on his Noahide lectures. I think he's trying to maybe put his little, eugenics incest agenda on the back burner, and maybe, I think he's hoping people kind of forget about it. But I'm going to make sure that never happens.
Yeah, I guess he must have been busy for a while. I didn't watch his latest one.
Oh, my goodness. Claire.
Have you watched anything good, worth watching? He's actually around. Shall we ask him to come along?
Well, I told you to get him to come onto the show so that I could ambush journalism him, but no, I have no doubt he's probably listening to this right now.
Yeah, because when he's kind of got the, on Facebook, you get the green light kind of thing that show that he's on, he's around. Anyway, I've sent him a link. It says active now, sexually active now.
You would totally accommodate his breeding camps. You totally would.
No, I would be imposing 100 lashes on these illegitimate offspring, right, left, and centre, in shopping malls up and down the country. Of course I would. I can't let them get away with it.
Oh man, Claire, I've stayed my hour. Claire, I'm leaving now.
Thank you for coming. Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. All right then.
It's as much fun as it was for those babies being waterboarded by those gnarly looking priests. Ta-ta, Claire.
Ta-ta. Minister of Corporal Punishment. Well, I suppose I could auction, plum jobs for my subscribers and my viewers, such as Minister of Corporal Punishment, Minister of Capital Punishment, Inspector of Brothels. I'll have a little think about that and see in what ways I can monetize secular Koranism, I guess. So thank you all for coming. It's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. I hope you managed to learn something new and interesting.